I've always seen myself as a loyal and dedicated husband. I work long hours as a software developer, but I make sure to spend quality time with my wife, Amelia, and our two kids, Ella, my talented 12-year-old who has a passion for art, and little Ben, only 5 but already brimming with joy and energy. For years, everything in my life seemed ideal. But recently, something felt off. It started with small changes. Amelia seemed more distant, more than usual, and I couldn't figure out why. She was spending more time out with friends, meeting for coffee or dinners more often. I tried to push aside my concerns, telling myself it was nothing. But then, I began to notice small inconsistencies, and that's when everything began to fall apart. One night, after putting Ben to bed, I went to check on Ella. I found her sitting on the floor of her room, staring at her phone, tears rolling down her cheeks. My heart shattered seeing her like that. I knelt beside her, deeply concerned. "Sweetheart, what's going on?" I asked softly. Ella quickly wiped her tears and avoided my gaze. "It's nothing, Dad. I just don't want to talk about it." I wanted to push for more answers, but before I could, Amelia called me from downstairs. Her tone was impatient, so I gave Ella a gentle pat on the back and promised we'd talk later. Then, I went to the living room. When I entered, Amelia was sitting on the couch, her phone in hand, looking anxious, more than usual. "Is everything okay?" I asked, sitting down beside her. She forced a smile. "Yeah, just thinking about some things." Her answer didn't feel right. Amelia had always been open with me. Why was she acting so strangely now? I watched her for a moment, but she avoided my eyes. Something wasn't right. "I'm heading to bed," I finally said, trying to keep my tone calm. "See you in the morning." That night, sleep eluded me. My mind raced. Amelia had been acting so differently lately. What was happening? The following days only made things worse. She continued to go out more, telling me she was meeting friends or running errands. The distance between us grew, and I could feel the strain on our relationship, even though she wouldn't admit anything was wrong. Then, one evening, I discovered something I couldn't ignore. While reviewing our household finances, a routine task, I noticed several large withdrawals from our savings account. Hundreds of dollars had disappeared over the past few weeks. I didn't recognize any of the transactions. I tried to push aside my suspicions, but the next morning, I couldn't hold back any longer. I confronted her at breakfast. "Amelia, why have you been taking so much money out of our account?" I asked, my voice tight with frustration. She froze, her face draining of color. She stammered, clearly unprepared for the question. "I needed it for some things," she answered quickly. "I didn't think you'd understand." "What kind of things?" I pushed, my heart sinking with every passing second. "It's personal," she replied, her voice quivering. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The withdrawals, the secretive phone calls, the growing distance between us. It all pointed to something I didn't want to acknowledge. But deep down, I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. Later that evening, when she told me she had to run an errand, I made a choice. I decided to follow her. I waited a few minutes after she left, then got into my car, keeping a safe distance behind her. She drove for about 20 minutes before pulling into a small, unremarkable apartment building on the edge of town. My heart raced the entire time, but I couldn't stop now. I parked a little further down the street and watched her walk inside. Every part of me screamed to turn around and leave, but I needed to know the truth. I crept up to a window, trying to stay out of sight, and peeked through. What I saw shattered me. There, in the dimly lit hallway, was Amelia, holding hands with another man. I froze, unable to breathe. The weight of her betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. I wanted to storm inside, to shout, to demand answers, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, my mind racing, and the ground seemed to slip away beneath me. After what felt like an eternity, I turned and walked back to my car, my hands shaking. I sat there for what seemed like hours, trying to process what I had just witnessed. The next day, I confronted her. She denied everything at first, but after hours of tense conversation, she finally admitted the truth. She'd been seeing another man for months. Not only had she been draining our savings to fund their secret life, but she also dropped a bombshell. I'm leaving, Jason, she said coldly. I can't stay with you anymore. Her words hit harder than I ever imagined. All the things I had worked for, the marriage, the family, the life we built together, were crumbling right before my eyes. The weeks that followed were some of the most painful of my life. I was devastated, furious, and lost. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I wasn't going to let her take Ella and Ben from me. They're my world, and no matter what, I would fight for them. It's going to take time, but I'm determined to get through this. For my kids, I have to.